Everyone loves to listen to a good book, and there are so many wonderful ones to choose, so we decided to bring you this podcast of Stories Come to Life. Each episode features a story from either classic or modern literature, especially chosen to be interesting and exciting to hear. So sit back, relax, and listen to this story come to life. Welcome to Stories Come to Life. I am your host, Kathryn Lopez Luker. Lynette, a beautiful but very proud and haughty maiden, begs for King Arthur to send his very best knight to rescue her sister from the clutches of 4 evil knights. She insists that Sir Lancelot be the one to help. King Arthur, however, has another idea, as a different but still fine and worthy knight is available. Maybe enduring the mocking maiden is one of the things Sir Gareth needs to face as he goes on this valiant quest. Merlin by now is very old and very tired. He longs for rest and knows he doesn't need to watch all the adventures of King Arthur and his knights unfold. Lovely Nimue, who is a magical fairy herself, asks Merlin to come to Broceliande, where the green tree and the white marble stone and the gentle fountain are waiting for him. Now sit back, relax, and listen to this story come to life. King Arthur and his Knights. The Maid Who Mocked. One morning, when there was to be a great feast, King Arthur, surrounded by his knights, sat in the banqueting hall waiting, as was his custom, for some adventure before breaking his fast. Ere long, one of his squires came running into the hall and said, "Now, my lord, you may eat, for even now a young maiden has arrived who has sore need of your aid." No sooner had he spoken than there entered a damsel of high lineage, and a brow May-blossom, and a cheek of apple bloom, hawk eyes, and lightly was her slender nose tip-tilted, like the petal of a flower. "How can you sit there, Sir King," she cried, wringing her hands, "when there is yet so much evil being wrought in your kingdom?" The king took her by the hand. "Be assured, maiden," he replied, "that neither I nor my valiant knights rest when there are wrongs to be righted, or evil ones to be punished. What is your need, and your name?" "My name is Lynette," said the maiden, "and I am nobly born. I have come to plead for a gallant knight, Sir Lancelot I crave, to come with me to the rescue of my sister, the Lady Leonore, who is held prisoner by 4 evil knights in the Castle Perilous. 3 of these false knights, who dub themselves Morning Star, Noonday Sun, and Evening Star, guard the approaches to the castle. The 4th, known as Night, and sometimes as Death, holds my sister within the castle." "Fair Lynette," replied Arthur, "you know well that the Order of the Round Table lives but to crush those who commit wrongs, or otherwise disobey the law. There is no one of my brave knights who would not eagerly go to the rescue of your noble sister. Be of good heart. None come to Arthur's court in vain." Now it happened that a year before there had come to Arthur's court a youth who had begged of the king 3 boons. When asked what these boons might be, he had replied, "I ask as the first that you, Sir King, will permit me to serve for 1 year in your kitchen, and for this grant me food and drink, no more. When the 12 months have sped, I will crave the other 2 boons." He was so handsome and tall, and bore himself so nobly, that the king suspected him of being well-born, and at once granted his first request. The youth was placed in charge of Sir Kay, who at once displayed a great jealousy of him, calling him Fair Hands, because his hands were large and white and well-formed, and losing no opportunity to scold and insult him. The youth, however, had in Sir Lancelot and Sir Gawain 2 good friends, who did him many a kind deed. While the king was deciding which of his knights he would send with Lynette, Fair Hands came to him and said, I have come to thank you, Sir King, for the food and drink that you have bestowed upon me for the past 12 months, and, now that the year has passed, to crave the 2 remaining boons." "What are these other boons?" said the king. "The first," replied Fairhands, "is that I may have the honor of going to the rescue of this maiden's sister, and the second, that I be made a knight by the great Sir Lancelot." The king smiled. "You shall have your requests, fair youth," he replied, "for truly you have served me well." The truth of the matter was that Fairhands, whose real name was Sir Gareth, was the son of a great king who had at one time warred against Arthur and done him a great wrong. So when young Sir Gareth desired to go to King Arthur's court and become a knight of the Round Table, his mother would permit him to go only on the condition that his real name should not be known, that he should serve until he had proved his worthiness in the king's kitchen, and that he should receive no pay but his meat and drink. When the maiden heard what the king said to Sir Gareth, she was very angry. "I asked," she said, "for Sir Lancelot's aid, and you have offered me a kitchen boy? Should such have the honor of fighting for my sister?" So murmuring again, "A kitchen boy," she walked haughtily out of the banqueting hall, mounted her waiting horse, and rode quickly away through the great gate of the castle. At this moment a page entered and told Sir Gareth that outside there awaited him a gaily harnessed horse and shining armor. Sir Gareth, all excitement, sped out of the hall, and there in the courtyard he found indeed as noble a steed and as glittering armor as any knight could desire. Swiftly he donned the armor and returned to the banqueting hall, where he took his leave of the king and Sir Gawain, who wished him Godspeed in his adventures. As he again left the hall, the king told Sir Lancelot to follow the young knight. Quickly upon his heels as he departed followed Sir Kay, jealous of the honors that had been conferred upon the youth and determined to humble him if possible. Once outside, Sir Gareth sprang upon his prancing horse and set out in pursuit of the departed maiden. He looked every inch a knight as he rode with grace his plunging charger, his armor sparkling in the sunlight. But when he had at length overtaken Lynette and offered himself as her faithful knight, she replied with great disdain, "Come not near me. You still smell of kitchen grease, and moreover, have a care of him who follows you." Sir Gareth turned and saw Sir Kay, who rode up and said in a commanding tone, "Don't you know me, Fairhands?" "Aye, indeed I know you," replied Sir Gareth. "I know you well for a false knight, and so knowing, beware of me." At this reply from his one-time servant, Sir Kay charged at him in a great fury, and would have unhorsed him with his spear. But Sir Gareth deftly turned aside the spear with his sword, and with a swift thrust wounded Sir Kay so sorely that he fell helpless from his horse. At this, Sir Gareth turned to Lynette and said, "Lead, and I follow." The maiden touched her horse and set off at such a great speed that Sir Gareth was put to the utmost to overtake her. At length her horse, exhausted by the wild race, was forced to halt. Then, as Sir Gareth drew up beside her, Lynette said bitterly, "Why do you so pester me, kitchen boy? Do you think that because by some trick you have bested your master, I shall love you any the better?" "Maiden," said Sir Gareth gently, "ridicule and abuse me as you will, but my king has appointed me your knight, and I shall not quit you until I have rescued your sister, the Lady Leonore, or suffered death in so striving." This reply made Lynette angrier than before, and she again started her horse and rode swiftly from him, plunging in her blind rage into the depths of a dense forest, so that Sir Gareth had to strive his utmost to keep her in view. At length, when Sir Gareth had finally come up with her, she said timorously, Sir Kitchen Boy, I have, I fear, missed the road that is guarded by King Arthur's men. This wood I know to be full of thieves. Truly, you may yet have a chance to prove that you can really fight." So on until the dusk the two rode, until from the crest of a long hill they saw, bull-shaped, through tops of many thousand pines, a gloomy gladed hollow slowly sink to westward, in the deeps whereof a mirror, round as the red eye of an eagle-owl, under the half-dead sunset glared. Soon they heard loud shouts, and out from the wood ran a servant crying that robbers had attacked and bound his master, and that they were about to cast him into the lake. Sir Gareth turned to Lynette. "My duty," he said, "is to go to the aid of this knight, but I am still more bound to protect you." Lynette smiled contemptuously. "You had better return to Arthur's kitchen. You would be safer there," she retorted. At this, Sir Gareth spurred his horse and rode at breakneck speed into the wood. Here he found 6 powerful robbers dragging a knight, bound with a large stone tied about his neck, toward the lake. Fiercely Sir Gareth attacked the robbers, and ere long had hurled 3 to the ground, senseless. The others at the sight fled in dismay. Then Sir Gareth quickly unbound the knight and untied the stone. Then said the rescued one, "Sir Knight, you saved my life. What return can I make to you?" "None," replied Sir Gareth. "I saved your life because my king would have me do such deeds. I ask but one favor in return, that you grant this maid a night's lodging." "That will I gladly do," replied the knight, "for I truly believe you to be one of the knights of the Round Table." At this, Lynette laughed aloud and mockingly said that her companion was indeed, in a manner, of the Round Table, being a dishwasher in the king's kitchen. Soon they beheld before them a stately, battlemented castle, and when they entered, found a great feast prepared. With gracious dignity, the knight seated Lynette and Sir Gareth at the table of honour, whereupon with a great show of indignation Lynette sprang to her feet and cried that she was being insulted, that Sir Gareth had forced his companionship upon her, and that she would not sit to eat beside a mere kitchen boy. Their host was greatly puzzled by her words, but declaring that, kitchen boy or knight, Sir Gareth had saved his life, he placed Sir Gareth at a lower table, and, leaving Lynette alone in her grandeur, seated himself beside his rescuer. On the morrow, Lynette and Sir Gareth thanked their host for his hospitality and took their leave. Again, Sir Gareth told Lynette to lead, and he would follow, at which she said that she would fly from him no more, but that if he valued his life, he would return to Arthur's court, for nearby there was one who would surely slay him. Her words had no effect on Sir Gareth, and as they rode along, she constantly mocking, he ever silent, they came presently to a great forbidding forest, through which coursed a tortuous, steep-banked river. Spanning the river was a single narrow bridge, and beyond, on a grassy slope, stood a bright golden silk tent, glinting in the brilliant sunlight. Above the tent, a crimson flag fluttered in the summer breeze, and before it, unarmed, a knight paced proudly backward and forward. As Lynette and Sir Gareth approached, the knight eyed them haughtily. "Maiden," he shouted, pointing to Sir Gareth, "is this the champion that you have brought from Arthur's court to compel us to let you pass?" "Oh, no, no, Sir Morning Star," replied Lynette. "The king so scorns your prowess that he has sent but a mere kitchen boy. Indeed, he is no knight." Then Sir Morning Star called commandingly, "Arm me!" And at his words, from the tent there ran 3 fair girls, dressed in robes of red and gold, whose bare feet twinkled in the dewy grass. Swiftly these maidens decked Sir Morning Star in armour, blue as a midsummer sky, and brought to him a blue shield upon which was engraved a silvery morning star. For a few moments, Sir Gareth stood silently gazing at Sir Morning Star, all the while Lynette cruelly taunting him. "Why do you stand there staring and shaking with fear?" she mocked. "There is time for you to flee, before the knight has yet mounted his horse." "Maiden," replied Sir Gareth, "I would rather 100 times fight than have you abuse me and call me that which I am not." At this he turned his horse and sped headlong for the narrow bridge, toward which Sir Morningstar was racing from the other side. So terrific was the force with which they met, that both were hurled from their horses, and lay for a moment stunned. Quickly they rose and continued the battle on foot, fighting so fiercely with their swords that Sir Gareth's shield was sliced from edge to edge. An instant later, with a mighty stroke, Sir Gareth drove his enemy to the ground. Crying, "I yield!" Sir Morningstar begged Sir Gareth to spare his life. "That I will do," replied Sir Gareth, "on the condition that this maiden pleads for you." "Indeed, I will ask no favor of you, kitchen boy," said Lynette haughtily. "Then he shall die," declared Sir Gareth, striding toward Morningstar. "Do not dare, base kitchen knave, to kill one so far your superior," cried Lynette, horror-stricken. "I am proud to obey your command, maiden," replied Sir Gareth, bowing to her. "Sir Knight, arise and go to King Arthur's court, and say that his kitchen boy has sent you, and forget not to beg his pardon for breaking his laws. Your shield I claim in place of that which you have destroyed." Then turning to Lynette, he said, "Lead, and I follow." Presently, as they rode along, Lynette said half shyly, It seemed to me, kitchen boy, that as I watched you fighting on yon bridge, the odor of kitchen grease seemed to fade. But I warn you again that you had better turn back, for close by there is the brother of Sir Morningstar, who will surely destroy you." Sir Gareth laughed. "Oh, when I washed dishes in the king's kitchen," he said, "a fellow servant owned a dog which, when told to guard his master's coat, never ceased to guard it. You are like that coat, and I am the dog, sent by Arthur to guard you." In a few minutes they came to a bend of the river, which was shallow but very swift. Across the shallows, seated on a blood-red horse and clothed in armor so burnished that it was blinding in the sunlight, they beheld Sir Morningstar's brother, Noonday Sun. "Who are you that dares to trespass on my property?" he shouted to Sir Gareth. "He is a mere kitchen boy," said Lynette, "sent from Arthur's court, who by good chance has defeated your brother, and is even now bearing his shield." When he had heard her words, Sir Noonday Sun, with a great shout, dashed into the torrent, where Sir Gareth met him halfway. There was small opportunity for skilful use of arms, but for the space of an hour the two fought, swords ringing loudly against helmet and shield, until for an instant Sir Gareth feared that he had met his master. By a rare stroke of fortune, however, at this crisis Sir Noonday Sun's horse missed his footing and stumbled, and together knight and horse fell with a great splash into the angry stream. Unwilling to see Noonday Sun drown, Sir Gareth put forth his greatest effort, and after a severe struggle with the whirling currents, laid his enemy's bruised body upon the river bank. "Go you to King Arthur," he said, "and say that his kitchen boy has sent you." Then again to Lynette he said, "Lead, and I follow." With naught but a saucy turn of her lip, Lynette pointed. There across another bridge stood the third brother, Evening Star, clad only in his naked skin, which shone like burnished copper. "Why does the madman stand there naked?" said Sir Gareth. "He is not naked," replied Lynette, "but is clad in toughened skins, so that even though you cut his armor from him, these skins would turn the edge of your sword." At this point Evening Star shouted, "Oh, Brother Star!" For he had seen his brother's shield on Sir Gareth's arm. "Have you well slain the maiden's champion?" "He is no brother of yours," cried Lynette, "but a star from Arthur's court, who has bested your 2 brothers, and who will do the like to you." Then Evening Star blew a great blast on his horn, and to him, from a dingy weather-stained tent, came a withered hag, bearing ancient rusty armour, and a shield on which was a half-tarnished, half-bright evening star. No sooner was Sir Evening Star so armed, and mounted on his decrepit steed, than Sir Gareth charged, and the 2 met and fought with the greatest ferocity, until Sir Gareth hurled Evening Star to the ground. Time and again this happened, but always Evening Star was on his feet again in a moment, until, as his breath began to fail him, Sir Gareth was overcome with a feeling of despair. But as his heart began to fail him, he heard Lynette crying in a very different tone from her former mocking one, "Well done, kitchen boy knight! Oh, kitchen boy, brave as any knight! Strike and strike hard, for you are indeed worthy of the Round Table." Thus aroused to greater efforts, Sir Gareth hewed with his sword great pieces from Evening Star's armour. But he could make no impression on the hardened skin underneath. At length, though with one fearful stroke, he severed the other knight's sword at the hilt, and felt that victory was his. Then, against all rules of knighthood, Evening Star threw his great arms around him, and so crushed him even through his armour that Sir Gareth could scarcely draw a breath. With one final mighty despairing effort, Sir Gareth gathered his remaining strength and hurled Sir Evening Star over the side of the bridge, and staggering toward Lynette, left him to sink or swim. When he had arrived exhausted at the maid's side, he said once more, "Lead, and I follow." Lynette blushed a rosy red, and with downcast eyes replied, "No longer shall I lead. Henceforth you, the kingliest of all kitchen boys, shall ride by my side. Sir, and truly I am inclined to add knight, I am deeply ashamed that I have so mocked and abused you. I ask your pardon, for you have ever treated me with courtesy, and furthermore, you are as brave and meek as any of King Arthur's great knights. I am consumed with curiosity to know what name you bear." "Maiden," replied Sir Gareth, "you are not entirely to blame, though you should have trusted Arthur and should have known that he would send with you none but one he believes to be worthy. You have had your gibes. I have replied with deeds. Truly, your gibes fought for me. And now that you have spoken such fair words, there rides no knight, not even the great Lancelot, who could best me. But look! Who is this who approaches?" Sir Lancelot it was, who had paused to carry the wounded Sir Kay back to the court, and so delayed, had but now overtaken them. That he might not be known, he had covered the blue lions that decked his shield. When Sir Gareth turned and Sir Lancelot saw the star gleaming on his shield, he cried, "Ah, felon knight! Now I shall avenge my friend." In reply, Sir Gareth put spurs to his steed, but as he charged upon Sir Lancelot, the great knight, with a dexterous thrust of his spear, sent Sir Gareth sliding gently from his horse. As he touched the ground, Sir Gareth laughed aloud. His laughter infuriated the watching Lynette. "How can you laugh," she cried, "when you have been so shamefully overthrown? Why do you laugh? Because of your recent vain boast?" "I laugh, noble maiden," Gareth replied, "that I, the son of a king, and but now victor of the bridge in the shallows, should lie here, thrown by an unknown knight." Then, joyful at hearing his voice, and finding him still alive, Sir Lancelot dismounted, and grasped Sir Gareth's hand. "Is it indeed you, Lancelot, who have overthrown me?" said Sir Gareth. "Then I need not be ashamed." At this, going over to where Lynette still stood pouting, Sir Lancelot told her the true story of Sir Gareth, whereupon she clapped her hands and cried, "I am truly merry to find that my kitchen boy is a knight and of noble birth. But I have sworn to the black felon who guards my sister that I would bring you, Sir Lancelot, to lay him low. Now if you go, he will first fight you, and my knight, my one-time kitchen boy, will miss the full glory of the high and well-deserved adventure." "It is possible," replied Sir Lancelot, "that this felon may know my shield. Therefore let Gareth change his for mine, and take my charger." "How like Lancelot," said Lynette, "courteous in this manner as in all." Eagerly Sir Gareth seized Sir Lancelot's shield and mounted his charger, and silently they crossed a broad, peaceful meadow. A shooting star coursed over the heavens. "See!" cried Sir Gareth, "there falls the foe." And then a moment later, as out of the silence came the shrill hoot of an owl, "'Tis the felon, pleading for mercy." Suddenly Lynette clung in terror to his shield. "Return, I beg you," she cried, "this shield to Lancelot. He it is must fight. I could bite off the tongue that has so mocked and abused you. You have done wonders, marvellous deeds, but even you cannot perform miracles." "Be that as it may, maiden," said Sir Gareth, "I will defeat this last felon, or die in the attempt." And so on they rode, while gradually the stars disappeared one by one, as thunderclouds gathered overhead. Suddenly Lynette cried, "There!" Then all grew silent again, for before them lay the Castle Perilous. Nearby they saw on a flat field a huge tent, shaped like a mountain peak, and all black as midnight, except for a red border that ran around it. Beside the tent hung a long black horn, which, before the others could stop him, Sir Gareth seized and blew with all his might. Immediately they heard loud tramping within the castle, and lights began to flicker here and there. Then high above them, looking very beautiful among the trembling lights, stood the Lady Leonore, surrounded by her maids. As her glance fell upon Sir Gareth, she waved her white hand. Again Sir Gareth seized the horn and blew lustily upon it. At the sound, from out the huge tent came a monster in night-black armor, mounted on a coal-black horse, and on the armor was the figure of a skeleton with a skull on the helmet in place of a plume. The monster halted before Sir Gareth, but said not a word. At this moment, Sir Lancelot's charger, upon which Sir Gareth was mounted, neighed, at which sound Night's black war-horse bounded at full speed toward him. At the first shock, Night was thrown heavily to the ground. Slowly he rose, lifting with difficulty his heavy sword. With a mighty stroke, Sir Gareth split the skull atop his helmet, and with a mightier, split in twain the helmet. Then there appeared not the head of Death, but the face of a handsome boy who cried, "Spare me! My 3 brothers made me do this, believing that none would dare to fight such a terrifying figure." Now indeed was Lynette proud of her kitchen boy knight. Then sprang the happier day from underground, and Lady Leonore and her house, with dance and revel and song, made merry over death, as being, after all their foolish fears and horrors, only proven a blooming boy. So large mirth lived, and Gareth won the quest. The Witchery of Nimue. Merlin was growing very old now, and his work at Arthur's court was nearly finished. He had made the round table for the knights who took the great vow, and he had set the seat Perilous at the king's right hand. No knight had as yet ventured to take his place in that mysterious seat. If ever one or another approached it, the fiery letters would suddenly shine out in golden flame. "This is the Seat Perilous," and the murmur would once more pass from mouth to mouth of those who sat at the round table. "That is the Seat Perilous. No knight must sit in it today, nor tomorrow, nor for many years to come." The great magician no longer rode on his fairy stag over the hills at night time, nor took on the disguise of a bright-haired laughing youth. His beard grew very long and white, and he would sit outside the great doors of Camelot, singing to himself and playing on a harp that he held in his long magician's fingers. Then fell on Merlin a great melancholy. He walked with dreams and darkness, and with him, very often in those days, would sit the fairy Nimue, who was, as you know, one of the ladies of the lake. She had changed her name to Vivian, for Nimue was too strange a title for any human lady to bear. Since King Pellinore had brought her back to King Arthur's court, she had behaved as much like a flesh-and-blood princess as she could manage, but she was never anything really but one of the ladies of the lake, a mysterious, elfin thing with mermaid's eyes that were green and dark like the shadows you may see in mountain tarns. She knew much magic herself, and in the old days had often peeped in at Merlin as he sat in his house with the 70 windows and the 60 doors. It had been in obedience to the old wizard's orders that she had helped to make the wonderful and high adventure of the fairy hunt, which had carried off King Arthur into the enchanted forest so soon after his wedding day. And now it seemed to her the old magician was growing weary of the world, and she thought that he would be happier to go away and live forever in fairyland. Often she would persuade him to sing to her, and also to tell her stories of the magic he had made in his life. Her eyes would grow dark and bright with excitement as she listened, and she would twist her silken hair around her white fingers and tap her little feet on the grass. Then she would ask him to walk with her in the woods and meadows, and she would make wreaths of wild roses and lilies and hang them on her pretty neck and arms as they talked. Or she would lead him to the ferny brink of a deep pool and ask him if it were not like the fountain in Broceliande, over which the tall green tree bent its branches, and where the little birds sang so sweetly after rain. And, when night fell, she would persuade him to wander farther and farther into the forest, and to talk to her of the fiery dragon that had once lain coiled up among the stars. More particularly, she would speak of the 7 rays that shone over the west, for, said she thought those 7 rays were 7 fairies, of which she herself was one. Then she would try to make him speak of the silver table and the rich fisher and the shining cup, and would ask him where he had hidden the little book in which it was all written down. But this Merlin would never tell her. It had nothing, so he said, to do with any lady, let alone a lady of the lake, for he knew well enough that she was only a fairy from fairyland. Yet she fascinated him more and more, because, you see, he kept telling her secret after secret, so that she was spinning webs of his own magic about him all the time. One night they had been wandering in the woods together as usual, and Merlin, cold and weary, was walking slowly home alone. Vivian still lingered by the side of a lake in which were bright reflections of the stars. She loved the cool water with its deep, still shadows better than any human home. But Merlin still turned wistfully back to Camelot after his long days with the fairy in the forest. Tonight he was thinking deeply of Arthur and all the other knights of the Round Table. Above all, he was wondering when that night would come who could with safety sit in the Seat Perilous, because Merlin knew that this night, and he only, would be the knight who would be able to go into that far mysterious place where Joseph had hidden the silver table and the Holy Grail. As he thought about these things, suddenly a voice came through the trees, and he saw an old, old man leaning upon his staff, who spoke his name. "Merlin!" "Who are you?" said Merlin, startled. "I am Blaise, the hermit who christened you many, many years ago. Merlin, I have come to warn you. Your own enchantments are being woven around you. If you go on teaching your Lady of the Lake more of your secrets, she will cast a spell on you that even you will not be able to break, and she will keep you in fairyland forever." Merlin sighed. He tried to see Blaise's face through the shadows, but it was very dark. "Good Blaise," he said, "what am I but half a fairy myself? I have done, I think, all that I was meant to do. I have set King Arthur on the throne of his father. I have made the Round Table. I have explained the letters written in the Seat Perilous. The shining cup is still hidden, but I do not think I am meant to wait at Arthur's court until it is found. I should be glad to go into some far country, say to Broceliande, and to rest there in the green forests forever." Blaise waited a minute or two, then spoke again. "It may be as you say," he answered. "Perhaps your work is really done. It has been a good work, Merlin. The wild mountain demons have lost much of their powers since the Round Table was made. They will lose it all when once the shining cup has been found again. And for the ladies of the lake, well, they are kindly and helpful to men. Did they not give the king his sword Excalibur? So go your way, Merlin. Rest, if you like, forever by the side of the woodland fountain, under the branches of the tall green tree." The hermit's voice died away, and Blaise seemed to be swallowed up in the shadows of the wood. But slipping through the trees, he saw the bright nymph Vivien coming to him again. "Great wizard," she said, putting her little cool hand in his, come away with me to Brittany. Come to Broceliande." Merlin laid his arm around her shoulders. "If I should go with you to Broceliande," he said, "I do not think I should ever come back again." Never mind," whispered the fairy, patting the old man's hand. "Only come." She drew him across the dim, dewy meadows until they reached the seashore. There, under the stars, a little boat was rocking, one of the fairy boats that belonged to the ladies of the lake. "Come," whispered Vivien once more, and this time Merlin consented without another word. So they sailed away to Brittany and to Broceliande, where the green tree grew over the magical fountain that Gawain, and only Gawain, had found. But the Lady of the Lake knew every inch of the ferny path that led to it. As she drew Merlin toward it, she gathered the magic fern seeds and tossed them playfully about him. "It is the eve of St. John," she said. "The fern seeds would make even a human invisible. What will they do to you, do you think?" But Merlin only smiled at her in the moonlight without answering, and they went on, side by side. Then before them they saw white thorn bushes glimmering pale, and above the bushes the tall green tree. They reached the fairy fountain and sat down beside it. "See," said Vivien, "here are the white marble slab and the silver bowl fastened by the silver chain. But no knight is guarding the fairy well tonight." "Why should it be guarded?" asked Merlin, laying his hand on the marble. "The fountain is mine, has always been mine. The secrets of its waters are mine. This white stone is mine. See, my name is written there." Vivien looked, and to her amazement, she saw letters of gold appear just for a moment on the marble slab. "I am the Stone of Merlin." They shone there exactly like the letters on the Seat Perilous, and then they faded away. The fairy drew nearer to the wizard, and he laid one hand on her hair, while with the other he fingered the silver bowl. "Are all the secrets of fairyland yours, Merlin?" "Most of them, sweet lady of the lake, most of them. They are strange secrets, but the greatest of all lies under that stone." "What is it? Tell me, what is it?" "It is the secret of sleep," said Merlin dreamily, "of sleep that can make a man lie and dream from day to day, from month to month, from year to year. I could almost wish I were folded in such a strange, sweet sleep." "Tell me," said the fairy again, "tell me." She was eager to know, half from curiosity, half from the desire for power. And so Merlin told her at last the song and the dance that would draw from that mysterious stone its great secret of unending sleep. Then the fairy stood up, and while he watched her, still dreamily, she began to sing very softly, and to weave a fairy ring all about the tired old wizard, and the white marble slab, and the magic pool. And as she sang and danced, Merlin's weary eyes closed, and his head drooped low on his chest, down which streamed his long white beard. Then a little silver mist like pearly air crept up from the fountain and out from beneath the fairy stone, and the magician's head bent lower and lower until at last he lay beside the mysterious fountain in Broceliande, fast asleep. Vivian stopped singing and dancing and stood looking at him in the moonlight, her eyes more like green water than ever. The leaf shadows flickered over her and over the sleeping wizard, and the pearly mist grew thicker. At last the dew from it seemed to sprinkle the fairy's hair, and she laughed, for it reminded her of her own lovely lake. So gathering her gleaming robes around her, she slid away like a silver shadow, back to her own enchanted waters, leaving Merlin sleeping soundly and calmly in the fairy mist, under the tall green tree. This is your host, Kathryn Lopez Luker. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Stories Come to Life. Be sure to join us next time when we continue to listen to stories of King Arthur and his knights. If you enjoy this podcast, please send an email to kluker@marshallpl.org to tell me of your favorite stories. I'll talk to you again soon.